Please be seated.
Will the Senate please come to order?
Members, we have Governor's Message number 868. It's a letter dated July 9th, 2020, appointing Ms. Bennett Misalucha to fill the vacancy for the 16th Senatorial District.
File. At this time, the chair calls on Senators English, Keith Agaran, and Favela to escort Senator Misalucha to the rostrum. The chair calls on Chief Justice Mark Rechtenwald of the Hawaii Supreme Court to administer the oath of office.
Right, and as always, thank you to the Senate for the honor of being able to be here today. If you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Bennett Misalucha,
I, Bennett Misalucha,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Hawaii,
and the Constitution of the State of Hawaii,
and that I will faithfully discharge my duties
that I will faithfully discharge my duties
as a member of the Senate of the State of Hawaii
as a member of the Senate of the State of Hawaii
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Senator
Thank you.
Misalucha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice Rechtenwald. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our newest senator, the Honorable Bennett Misalucha. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to make a special presentation to our newest member. In conjunction with our 55 years of statehood anniversary in 2014, we presented a very special lapel pin to current and past senators. This pin is a symbol of your service in the Senate and to the people of the state of Hawaii. We owe a debt of gratitude to President Emeritus Kim, who had it designed and made. And under Senate Rule 92, the Senate pin shall only be worn by current or past members. Welcome to the Senate. Take your seat. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Baker. Senator Chang.
Here.
Senator Dela Cruz. Senator English. Senator Favela. Senator Gabbard. Senator Ihara. Senator Inoue. Senator Kahele. Senator Kanuha. Senator Keith Agaran. Senator Keoho Kalole. Senator Kidani. Senator Kim. Senator Misalucha. Senator Moriwaki. Senator Nishihara. Senator Rhodes.
Present.
Senator Riviere. Senator Ruderman.
Aloha.
Senator Shimabukuro. Senator Taniguchi. Senator Thielen. Senator Wakai. Mr. President,
Present.
all 25 members are present.
Thank you. The chair has read the journal of the preceding day and approves the same. Are there any introductions today, Senator Misalucha?
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I remove my mask, if that's okay? No? Okay. All right. Colleagues, I would like to introduce a few special guests that are who are joining us in the gallery this afternoon. These three people and a little one, so four together, are near and dear to our beloved Senator Breen Harimoto's heart. Their presence is a testament that we intend to continue the legacy that the senator has started in the district. First, we have Council Member Brandon Elefante, who ably represents Council District 7. Throughout his career, Breen was a father figure and a mentor to him. Then we have Senator Harimoto's office staffers who have been with him throughout his Senate and even the council years. Robert Sato and Linda Nunes, who I know are familiar to you, please stand, have been towers of strength during this difficult time. I'm grateful to them for keeping the home fires burning. And moving forward, our office has a strong commitment to ensure that the needs of the district will be addressed as promised. Finally, we have a special guest, Councilmember Elefante's nephew, Kyler Ventura. Welcome to the Senate. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, and to be clear, Robert and Linda were introduced because the intention of Senator Misalucha is to continue them in the office through November 3rd so that there would be continuity and people who would have familiarity with the district. And again, as she has expressed, it's important to her to continue to carry out the vision of the late Senator Harimoto, and she feels with his two staff members continuing, that would be the best way to achieve the goals. So thank you. Madam Clerk?
On pages 2 through 5, Departmental Communication number 461 to 487, transmit various reports.
File.
Beginning on page 5, House Communication numbers 417 and 418 inform the Senate that the House has disagreed to the amendments proposed by the Senate to various House bills. On page 9, House Communication numbers 419 and 420 inform the Senate that the House has reconsidered its action in disagreeing to the amendments made by the Senate to various House bills. And on pages 9 through 13, House Communication number 421 informs the Senate of the House's intent to agree to the amendments made by the Senate to various House bills.
File.
We're on page 13, Deferred Matters. House Communication number 393 returns Senate Bill number 2206, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 2, relating to homelessness, which passed third reading in the House in an amended form for agree-disagree.
Senator Chang. I think you're on mute, Senator Chang.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the amendments made by the House to Senate Bill number 2206 SD2.
Senator Kahele.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Senator Chang?
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is an effort to address the urgent homelessness crisis that is unfolding across the state, and in particular, one particular location. And that's why these amendments are needed.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any objections? If not, the motion is carried. Madam Clerk.
Final reading of Senate Bill 2206, House Draft 2, relating to homelessness.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2206, House Draft 2, passes final reading.
On page 14, still under Deferred Matters, House Communication number 409 returns Senate Bill number 2893, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 2, relating to chronically homeless. House Communication number 410 returns Senate Bill 2894, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 2, relating to child care. And House Communication number 414 returns Senate Bill 3117, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 2, relating to homelessness. These bills passed third reading in the House in an amended form for agree-disagree.
Senator Ruderman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the amendments made by the House to SB 2893 SD1, SB 2894 SD1 and SB 3117 SD1.
Senator Kahele.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Senator Ruderman.
Thank you. For SB 2893, this measure was necessary to provide clarity about the definition of chronically homeless. The amendments were mostly housekeeping. For 2894, the purpose was to provide some clarity as to which child care facilities are exempt from reporting requirements. And on 3117, this extends the sunset date of the medical respite pilot project while removing money for it. And these are all agreeable to us, and I thought it's a great time for us to be agreeable. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Any objections to the motion? If not, the motion is carried. Madam Clerk.
On page 14, final reading of Senate Bill 2893, House Draft 2, relating to chronically homeless.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2893 HD2 passes final reading.
Still on page 14, final reading of Senate Bill 2894, House Draft 2, relating to child care.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2894 HD2 passes final reading.
Final reading of Senate Bill 3117, House Draft 2, relating to homelessness.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes.
Thank you. SB 3117 HD2 passes final reading.
Still on page 14, deferred matters, House Communication number 411 returns Senate Bill 2940, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 2, relating to the Stadium Development District.
Senator De La Cruz?
Short recess.
No objections? Short recess? Recommit. Will the Senate come back into order on this bill because of the error that was caught? I would request, if there are no objections, that we defer this bill indefinitely. See no objections, so ordered. Madam Clerk.
On pages 14 to 19, advise and consent.
If there are no objections from the members, we will be taking advise and consent on consent.
Standing Committee Report numbers 3794 to 3807 on Governor's Messages for adoption.
Is there any discussion? Senator Favela? If you would use your microphone, please.
On Governor's Message number 621, I'm opposing.
So noted.
Thank you.
Senator Ihara?
Mr. President, could you note my reservations on the same Governor's Message 621 reservations?
Okay, on Governor's Message 621, besides Senator Ihara, do we have other reservations?
No vote for me, sir.
No vote for Senator Favela and Ruderman. So do we have unanimous consent on those items, with the exception of Governor's Message 621, with no votes for Senator Favela, Senator Ruderman, and reservations for Senator Ihara?
On Governor's Message number 621, 23 ayes, 2 noes. On all other Governor's Messages, 25 ayes.
Thank you. The nominees for said Governor's Messages have been confirmed.
On page 19, Standing Committee Report number 3808 on Governor's Message number 502, Craig K. Hirai, gubernatorial nominee as the Director of Finance for the Department of Budget and Finance, for adoption.
The Committee on Ways and Means made no recommendation on Governor's Message number 502. Therefore, the Chair will first entertain a motion to file Standing Committee Report number 3808 Then we'll move to the final vote on this matter. Senator Keith Agaran.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to file Standing Committee Report number 3808.
Senator Baker.
I second the motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any objections? If not, the motion is carried. The clerk is directed to file Standing Committee Report number 3808 and place the same in the journal. Members, pursuant to Senate Rule 37, Parent 3, the final question on the nomination made by the governor must be stated in the affirmative. Therefore, those casting aye votes will be voting to advise and consent, and those casting no votes will be voting to reject the nomination. The chair will now entertain a motion to advise and consent to the nomination of Mr. Hirai. Senator Keith Agaran.
I move that the Senate advise and consent to the nomination of Craig K. Hirai as Director of Finance for the Department of Budget and Finance.
Senator Baker.
Mr. President, I second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent? Reservations for Senators Favela, Wakai, Kim? Would you like a reservation, Senator? You going to go Kanalua twice? Do we have any no votes? Reservations for Senator Riviere.
Mr. President, could we use, the members cannot hear what's going on on the
Yes,
floor?
So ordered, Senator Moriwaki asked to be recorded with reservations, and she has remarks she wants inserted into the journal. Senator Favela, you have remarks as well?
Yes, I want to do that. Thank you. Thank you, Senate President.
Thank you. Again, reservations, Senators Favela, Wakai, Moriwaki, Riviere, Kim. Remarks for Senators Favela and Moriwaki.
25 ayes.
Thank you. Craig K. Hirai has been confirmed as the Director of Finance for the Department of Budget and Finance. Madam Clerk?
At the bottom of page, I'm sorry, members, we're moving to the supplemental order of the day. Governor's message number 869 withdraws the nomination of the Director of the Department of Taxation.
File.
Moving back to the regular order of the day, on page 19 at the bottom, Standing Committee Report number 3809 on Governor's message number 503, Rona M. Suzuki, gubernatorial nominee as the Director of Taxation, for adoption.
If there are no objections from the members, action on this measure is deferred indefinitely.
On page 20, Standing Committee Report number 3827 on Governor's message number 751, Damian Elefante, gubernatorial nominee as the chairperson of the Labor and Industrial Relations Appeal Board, for adoption.
The recommendation of the Committee on Labor, Culture, and the Arts on Governor's message number 751 is that the Senate not advise and consent to the nomination of Damian Elefante as chairperson of the Labor and Industrial Relations Appeals Board. Therefore, the chair will first entertain a motion to file Standing Committee Report number 3827. Then we'll move on to the final vote on this matter. Senator Keith Agaran.
I move to file Standing Committee Report number 3827.
Senator Baker.
I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any objections? If not, the motion is carried. The clerk is directed to file Standing Committee Report number 3827 and place the same in the journal. Again, members, pursuant to Senate Rule 37, Parent 3, the final question on nominations made by the governor must be stated in the affirmative. Therefore, those casting aye votes will be voting to advise and consent, and those casting no votes will be voting to reject the nomination. The chair will now entertain a motion to advise and consent to the nomination of Mr. Elefante. Senator Keith Agaran.
I move that the Senate advise and consent to the nomination of Damian Elefante as the chairperson of the Labor and Industrial Relations Appeals Board.
Senator Baker.
I second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Senator Taniguchi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in opposition to the confirmation.
Please proceed.
Mr. President, your Committee on Labor, Culture, and the Arts held a public hearing on May 25th, on May 15th for this governor's message. Decision-making was made on July 7th after full consideration of the nominee's qualifications and the testimony received. The committee voted unanimously to not confirm the nominee. Mr. Elefante is an inappropriate nominee to be chair of the board, which deals with complex workers' compensation cases. At present, the nominee has no background or experience in the law or cases involving workers' compensation, boiler and elevator safety, occupational health and safety, or wages and benefits. Your Committee on Labor took notice that as a matter of custom and practice, the Labor and Industrial Relations Appeal Board has included proportional representation from labor, management, and government to provide the appropriate balance needed to fairly apply the law, decide cases, and develop policy precedents. The nominee would be the second government representative, together with one management representative on the 3-member appeals board. No claimant representative would be included. Your Committee on Labor, Culture, and the Arts received testimony in opposition to the nominee from 7 labor organizations, whose thousands of public and private employee members utilize the established rights and benefits for which claims are made and appeals may follow. These organizations were alarmed by the possible loss of any labor representative on the appeals board and the nominee's clear lack of experience in the substantive areas of law comprising the appeal board's jurisdiction. Based on these concerns, I ask that the Senate not advise and consent to the nomination and vote no on the Governor's Message 751. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, do we have unanimous
Mr.
consent?
President?
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry. It has been moved and second, the discussion. So members, and I vote is to confirm. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Ihara,
Mr. President, I rise in opposition to this nominee.
please proceed.
I have no problem with this nominee's ability to learn. So as to his qualifications, I believe he can do that. I think he's the kind of person that we need in government. But my one sticking point is that we are changing the practice of having a balance on this appeals board. There was an exception. A former senator was the chair. But in that case, there was consensus that he could be part of the balance. Now, the balance issue may be wrong. I could not find, it's not in the law anywhere. It's been the Senate's practice, and our job, our role is we are the ones who vet the leaders of the other 2 branches. Nobody gets past us. No top leaders in the other branches get positioned until they come through our vetting process. And so we have had as past practice, and I asked the nominee, what would be the rationale for changing this practice? Because I'm open to changing it. I've not received any. I did receive a response. It was a little bit conclusionary. It's outmoded, and we need to move on and all that. But I still haven't found the reason. I believe it might have been. I think if I had to make the argument, I would make it that and I'm not going to make the argument, but I believe that there is, in my mind, and I could be wrong, that I do not find reason to change our past practice of having consensus or a balance. It does, to me, I don't think we need to have proportional representation. I don't have to go that far. But I believe that there needs to be at least some semblance that, some trust in the community that, that the parties to these appeals would be viewed from a balanced perspective. It's a vague notion, I believe, because that's why it's not in the law, but at least for me, I am, let me say one more thing. I have said it before, I use my vote on nominations and on bills. This is what I call a political act, because as elected officials, constitutional officers, we have wide latitude on how we vote. Left, right, up and down, deep, back, any which way. We don't need a reason. We are the sort of like the policy gladiators in the Coliseum. They elect us and we do the people's work. They have no role in this except we want people's input. I believe that for me, my own perspective is that we have too much politics in the public policy arena, and the public wants to see public policy conducted using civic values. And my main North Star is, what is a civic purpose? And I do not see a civic purpose. I see a political purpose for this nominee to reduce the backlog, to get the more decisions made, and so forth. And I consider that a political reason, a good political reason, because we need to be strong in order to do the job. And that's fine. The question is, what is the civic purpose? And I have not been able to find a civic purpose in this case. So I'm voting no for this nominee. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Senator Kidani,
Mr. President, thank you. I rise in support of the nominee.
please proceed.
I think what I heard the previous speaker say, that there was an exception made in the past and it was a political one. And the exception was a former senator. So nothing seems more political to me than to deny this nominee the same exception. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Again, then, Senator Favela.
Yes, Senator President, I was also part of the committee on labor for Mr. Elefante. I'm going to be voting with reservations. And the reason for that is because I got to finally talk extensively for about over hours, a couple hours with him. And my main concern was because I very concerned about his labor. That was one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to him and kind of pick his brain. I understand we have concerns on his abilities to be the part of labor, but with the conversation that I had with him, his ability for law, and that's the important part, knowing the laws. There is something about him that I know that he's going to be able to not only interpret, but follow the law in the favor of what he needs to do for his position. I understand the unions have some concern, and he tried to reach out to some of the unions, and I asked him this question, because of there is enormous opposition from the unions. If he is put through, would he be able to reach out to them and try to break bread and ho'oponopono with them and try to make them see that he is a good qualified candidate that is capable of following the law and doing right by the people and the government agencies and the people that they represent. So that's the only reason why I am voting with reservations, because I know he does not have that experience in labor, but I think he's more than capable of following and abiding by the laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Again, if not, an aye vote is a vote to advise and consent to the nomination. A no vote is to reject the nomination. Do we have unanimous consent? I have no votes for Senators Taniguchi, Ihara, Kim, Gabbard, Kahele. No vote for me, Madam Clerk. Do we have reservations for Senator Favela?
Mr. President,
Yes. Are you a no vote, Carl?
I'm a no vote.
Let me rewrite this. So I got Kim.
Mr. President, if you would also record my no vote for Senator Chang.
So we've got Senator Chang, Senator Rhodes. Then I have Senator Taniguchi, Senator Ihara, Senator Kim. Was that a no vote, Senator Gabbard? Senator Baker is a no vote. Senator Kahele.
No.
Do we need to go through this again, Madam Clerk?
Reservations?
Reservations is Senators Favela, Morawaki.
And Ruderman, please.
And Ruderman.
And Ruderman.
16 ayes, 9 noes.
Thank you. Damian Elefante has been confirmed as chairperson of the Labor and Industrial Relations Appeals Board. Madam Clerk.
On page 20, Standing Committee Report number 3828 on Governor's Message number 583, Christopher Yuen, gubernatorial nominee to the Board of Land and Natural Resources, for adoption.
There are no objections. We'll take a short recess. Madam Clerk?
Members of the Senate, please be seated.
The recommendation, will the Senate come back to order, please? The recommendation of the Committee on Water and Land on Governor's Message number 583 is that the Senate not advise and consent to the nomination of Christopher Yuen to the Board of Land and Natural Resources. Therefore, the Chair will first entertain a motion to file Standing Committee Report number 28, then we will move on to the final vote on this matter. Senator Keith Agaran.
Mr. President, I move to file Standing Committee Report number 3828.
Senator Baker.
I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any objections? If not, so the motion is carried. The clerk is directed to file Standing Committee Report number 3828 and place the same in the journal. Again, members, pursuant to Senate Rule 37, Parent 3, the final question on the nominations made by the governor must be stated in the affirmative. Therefore, those casting aye votes will be voting to advise and consent, and those casting no votes will be voting to reject the nomination. The Chair will now entertain a motion to advise and consent to the nomination of Mr. Yuen. Senator Keith Agaran.
I move that the Senate advise and consent to the nomination of Christopher Yuen to the Board of Land and Natural Resources.
Senator Baker.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Senator Baker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in strong support of Governor's Message 583 for the reappointment of Chris Yuen to the Board of Land and Natural Resources.
Please proceed.
I believe he is highly qualified. He's always been a strong voice for the environment. His lifetime record of conservation advocacy and achievement, I believe, speaks for itself. Chris's legacy is far-reaching, whether through good planning or public acquisition of precious conservation and parklands. Chris Yuen's contributions will benefit generations. His legal training, planning expertise, demonstrated commitment, and track record makes him a valuable BLNR member in helping to protect and wisely manage Hawaii's natural resources, the core mission of the Board of Land and Natural Resources. There's one more criterion by which every appointee to a state board or commission should be judged, and that is personal integrity. There should be no self-dealing, no self-aggrandizement. There should be a genuine focus on the common good or the greater good, and there should be honesty. I believe personal integrity describes Chris Yuen. Also, many upstanding and highly respected citizens who have worked with Chris over the years support his reappointment. Folks like Colbert Matsumoto, Leah Hong, Ken Kupchak, Roy Takimoto, Keith Kato, and Joanne Yukimura. Chris is a moderate voice that will help BLNR find real solutions and create the community of aloha. I support Chris Yuen's nomination because I believe he has the integrity and demonstrated commitment and ability that's much needed by the Board of Land and Natural Resources. I ask my colleagues to join me to vote to confirm him. Mahalo.
Thank you. Further discussion, Senator Inouye.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in strong support
Please
of
proceed.
Governor's Message 583, Chris Yuen's nomination to the Board of Land and Natural Resources. Chris is a long-standing public service with decades of experience and knowledge that can continue to benefit the board, Hawaii Island, and the state. Those who know Chris and have served alongside him know him for his character, his integrity, his level-headedness, and his fair decision-making. We can see this highlighted in the testimony that was submitted by DLNR Chair Suzanne Case, Board Member Sam Ohu-Gon III, Professor Jonathan Price, and among many others. Chris Yuen has received opposition from a number of individuals, that are frustrated by his decisions regarding Kalo'i Gulch, the North Shore Wind Farm, and the East Maui water permits. As legislators, we know that we all must make difficult decisions. We research, we listen to the community, and we hope that whatever side of the issue we are on, it has the positive outcome that we intended. Either way you vote, there will likely be a group of people that will disagree with your decision. There is seldom a clear right or wrong answer. Yet, the committee report emphasizes again and again that Chris has come up on the wrong side of the vote. I respect my colleagues in doing their due diligence to make sure that the people's interests are acknowledged and represented. However, I also have concerns that the committee is holding Chris responsible for decisions that were made by a majority of the DLNR board members. If we are going to single Mr. Yuen out for his vote on issues, then why don't we look to his voting record in some of your own districts? To the senator representing Manoa, Chris rejected the expansion of Paradise Park. To the senator representing Ala Moana, Chris voted to not reduce the free parking at the Alawai Boat Harbor. And to the senator representing Kapa'a, Chris voted to approve the Ha'ena State Park Master Plan, which addressed the increasing number of visitors and associated impacts in order to protect significant cultural resources, maintain the park's natural beauty, and attempt to reduce impacts to the local communities and residents. Chris has also voted in favor of several land acquisitions, including nearly 2,900 acres of mountain watershed and lands set for native reforestation and recreation, known as the Helemanu Wilderness Recreation Area in Senate District 22. And the land acquisition from Kavela Bay to Kahuku Point preserved 630 acres of undeveloped property next to Turtle Bay Resort in Senate District 23. For years, development on this coast was fervently opposed by all who love Oahu's North Shore. Chris Yuen's decision ensured that access to the shoreline will remain undeveloped so that people will be able to enjoy the land for generations to come. The Department of Land and Natural Resources pledge is to enhance, protect, conserve, and manage Hawaii's unique and limited natural, cultural, and historic resources for current and future generations of the people of Hawaii. I believe it is evident that Chris Yuen's decisions aligns with his obligations as a board member. He has shown his willingness to sacrifice time, effort, and political affiliations in order to serve the people of Hawaii. Colleagues, in closing, let me share some comments that I received from President Lehua Kona Isaacs and past President Dr. Charles Burrows of Ahuhui Malama Ika Lokahi, Hawaiians for the Conservation of Native Ecosystems. Please vote yes to confirm Chris Yuen as a member of Board and Land and Natural Resources. This modest, thoughtful champion of the environment is needed due to his experience and grace while finding a way forward for the many users of public waters and lands. Instead of just enjoying the fruits of his country farm or basking in a beach or park he planned or defended, in an era of civic dilemmas, thankfully this unflappable citizen volunteers more years in a hot seat, sorting options with great care to build a better future for Wahipana, special places and communities we love. Chris Yuen has had a broad legal, planning, and farming experience all over the state, beginning at Volcanoes National Park and continuing in Kona, pushing for new state parks. Together, we have worked for 30 years volunteering in Kawainui State Park Reserve's legendary sites, Napohaku o Hauwahine and Ulupoheao, while leading the nonprofit Ahahui Malama I Ka Lokahi. Recently, Mr. Yuen crucially improved the DLNR master plan to allow a home base for our future restoration efforts. Too many Hawaiians have become disconnected from these places, and he enhanced educational opportunities for local folks, youth especially, to be personally involved in outdoor environmental restoration. The cultural benefits of nonprofit education centers around the public's marsh are new to this plan. We have personally experienced his problem solving, proving the public needs his experience, grace, and wisdom on BLNR. So we strongly urge you, Senator Inouye, and members of the Senate, to please vote to confirm Chris Yuen. For these reasons, Mr. President, I will be voting to reconfirm Chris Yuen to the Board of Land and Natural Resources, and I hope my colleagues will do that same. Mahalo.
Thank you. Further discussion? If not, do we have unanimous?
Mr. President.
Senator Ruderman,
Thank you. I rise in support.
please proceed.
Thank you. I've known the nominee for well over 30 years. I know him personally from within our community, and I feel it's my job to speak out, because I've heard a lot of things said that aren't true about him. Full disclosure, although I'm pretty sure it's not a conflict of interest, I do buy bananas and lychee from Chris's organic farm, and I'm a good friend of his wife and himself. One of the things I admire about Chris and his service on the board is that he's a very active board member. He's one of those board members that digs into the details and asks questions, asks the tough questions on both sides. It's easy to be a passive board member, and it's almost irresistible not to do that. But what we need are active board members who will dig into the details and will ask the tough questions. If you take 100 controversial votes, there's going to be, everyone's going to disagree on at least some of them, probably 5 or so, even if we totally agree. I've lost my connection to the chamber. I trust I'm still coming through.
Yes.
And I don't agree with, thank you, sir. I don't agree with all of his decisions. He's dead wrong on the most important issue in my community, which is geothermal. He's still willing to ignore the health impacts on hundreds of my neighbors. But in that regard, he's like almost everyone else, viewing the issue at a distance. So I don't agree with every one of his decisions. That's what happens when you make a lot of tough decisions. But I do want to take a minute to explain when I first met Chris Yuen, because it's telling. I was a member of a community called Wawa. It's out in as rural Puna as you can get. It's 4 miles down a dirt road. Only about 100 people live there. And one day at our community association, this guy comes to talk to us about trying to save a beach called Maklavena on the Kona side from development. He came to talk to us as a grassroots environmental activist. A guy whispered to me while I was at the meeting, do you know that this fellow has won a case before the United States Supreme Court? And I think that's a pretty rarefied atmosphere for attorneys. But this guy was out in the boondocks talking to 15 people about an environmental issue that was far from his home. And we were far from his home as well in another direction. So he was doing this volunteer work, the nuts and bolts work that is environmentalism, as a private citizen after having this really remarkable career as a successful attorney. By the way, the fellow, he went to the Supreme Court to save my friend Jim Good's house from an illegal forfeiture. Thank you. I thank him for that.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion?
I'm sorry, I'm almost done. There are many areas on the Big Island that are currently preserved because of Chris's efforts as a private citizen. And I don't know anyone else I can say that about. So when someone comes along and says, He used to be an environmentalist, but he's not anymore. Well, I'm an environmentalist, and I recognize one when I see one. And I admire Chris for his decades of action and efforts, even though I don't always agree with it. Thank you.
Sorry, Senator Ruderman, thank you. Any further discussion? Senator Kahele?
Mahalo, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to the nominee.
Please proceed.
Integrity, transparency, accountability, honor, fidelity, and trustworthiness. Those qualities mean a lot to me. And I know they mean a lot to this body because it means everything to the people of Hawaii, the people we serve and whose trust we cherish. Now, I have absolutely no doubt that the nominee had all of those qualities all the previous speakers spoke of before me. But that is not the nominee that came before the Waterland Committee, that has served on the BLNR for the last 6 years, and is a nominee before this body today. Why is the Hawaii Island seat on the Board of Land and Natural Resources so important? It's because preserving and sustaining in perpetuity the irreplaceable beauty of our state's natural resources for the benefit of my children and their children is our kuleana. It's our responsibility. Our vistas and landscapes, our majestic summits and streams, our lush waterfalls and coastlines, our sandy beaches and ocean resources, our rainforests and our pastures, our native birds and bats, and fish and oopu and hihivai and vekiu, and most of all, perhaps even best of all, our cultural resources and inheritance, the heart and the soul of these islands that gifted us, all of us, our unique identity in this world. Because of that, there is a profound responsibility that comes with this position. A nominee must possess compassion, open-mindedness, innovative ideas, due regard for the law, a healthy respect for our diverse communities and their opinions, however dissimilar from their own. And what I believe is the most important characteristic of a nominee: humility. The nominee is highly educated and is a dedicated individual who has volunteered his time over the last 6 years, 14 years total, to serve on the BLNR. Most people never get a chance to serve on the BLNR in their lifetimes. 14 years. We thank him for that. We appreciate his service. But today, it's time to move on. Now more than ever, we need a nominee. We deserve a nominee that understands how to bring people together and collectively work to address the management of our natural resources, who can understand how to administer these resources for the public, who respects this state's constitutional and statutory obligations. We need a nominee who can resolve conflicts. Unfortunately, on multiple occasions over the last 6 years, the nominee has not demonstrated this. For the many environmentalists, cultural practitioners, subsistence fishermen, farmers, limu gatherers, and yes, their legal advocates that 6 years ago strongly supported this nominee but do not support his nomination today. Why is that? Why is that? Well, the answer is obviously complex. But in the final analysis, these entities believe, as the subject matter chair, and the committee believe, that it is time for us to move on. And these people, they're not losers with malicious intent and ill-founded opinions, undeserving of an audience. They're not threats to our democracy. These people simply care deeply, as they should, as we all should, about the natural and cultural environment we're leaving for the next generation. And if that's their agenda that they're guilty of, then we owe it to them to listen more closely, to listen more thoughtfully, and more respectfully to what they have to say and teach us. Given that generations of residents will be affected by these decisions, we owe it to the public to fill the Board of Land and Natural Resources with people they trust, people who will listen with an open mind, people who look at decision-making as a process to be collaborative. There are many fair, reasonable, objective, and qualified individuals on Moku o Keawe, Hawai'i Island, who should be given an opportunity to apply and be considered for this important position. This body must set a minimum standard that we adhere to and a vision that we must strive for. We have a difficult decision to make, but that's why we are here. We thank the nominee for his 14 years of service on the Board of Land and Natural Resources. We wish him and his family well. But colleagues, it is time to give someone else on Hawai'i Island that opportunity. It's time to move on. And so I ask you to support my recommendation to not consent to Governor's Message number 583. Mahalo, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further discussion, Senator Favela?
Thank you, Senator President. I rise in opposition to this
Please
nominee.
proceed.
You know, I know I'm new to this body, but I did a lot of extensive research, not only in my community, but in other places on our neighbor islands. Yes, he has a very, very impressive resume, very impressive record. I even told that to the nominee. But the gentleman that came before us in the committee, and that's the reason why I have so much mixed feelings within myself battling, because I very much admire this guy in previous times in his main reason to take care of our environment. But as I went through and talked to people around the islands and realized there's a lot of decisions that this gentleman had made, and even went against the board when the board had made recommendations to support not doing certain things, and he went against them. And now some of the stuff is still in legal court. But I'm going to go with what I know, with Uncle Henry. In all the years that I know him, when I was the president of the neighborhood, president of the Lions Club, and chair of the neighborhood board, all his vision is to bring back the limo to not only in Ewa Beach, but to the state of Hawaii. With the constant run-ins that he had with Chris Yuen over the years, Uncle Henry, sadly to say, passed away. And he has left on his legacy to have other people to try to pursue his legacy. But his strength within the community in Limo and trying to get the state to realize on how important the environment on land is to the ocean, and what is the land doing to the ocean. And I'm not that smart with all that stuff because I'm not a swimmer. I mean, I don't swim since I was 12 years old in the ocean. But I know what our ocean in Ewa Beach looks like today, with all the runoffs, with all the development. And don't get me wrong, development is okay, but we have to have development that is smart. When we have opposition saying that Ever Beach, Howell Bush, where I grew up, where we clean every month, is okay to have runoff from the big development of Haseko, Department of Hawaiian Homeland, the city and county, yeah? All the guys whose mountainside, Opala, is going to come our side. And they're pushing Haseko to do it. So I called Haseko and asked them. They said they don't need to lower the berm to continue their development. It's everybody further inland, need them to lower the berm. So I asked Chris Yuen, what was his scientific fact, being the only person that voted no, saying it was okay when the 10-year flood come in and run off for a few hours, it won't contaminate the ocean, it won't contaminate the reef, it wouldn't kill the limo, wouldn't hurt the fish. If that's the case, then why did the city and county of Honolulu treatment plant, move the outlet pipe 1 mile out to sea? Because it was out there, exactly where he's talking about the runoff. 25, 30 feet, where they all claim they get toilet paper coming out of there. Toilet paper coming out of that pipe, it'd be a miracle. But the city knew what they was doing to the inlet and the outlet of that area. But exactly where he's talking about that it was okay. But again, we of Ever Beach, because we don't go to cane fields, we don't go to runoffs, we get all the golf courses. And so look at our golf courses, guys, if you guys ever been out to Ever Beach. I'm glad the Chair of Water and Land came out. He's seen every single golf course in our community get holes more deep than this Capitol roof. And you know why? When they had gotten their permits from the city and county said, you guys got to be able to make an area where you guys can catch in the 100-year flood. While moving forward with Chris Yuen 6 years ago, going forward. Now the city and county is putting the pressure on Haseko to do it, and the community. Community came against him. He was the only yes vote to lower the berm. So again, I asked him this question again, and I'm saying it again here. What was his scientific fact? He didn't have one. It was a personal or analysis that he had on himself of being 14 years experience. So I asked the candidate again, reading your resume, sir, reading your resume, this is two different people. Because the Chris Yuen in the beginning that our previous senators talk about on the Big Island, they came to talk to 15 people. That's not the guy. It's not. And I asked him that question. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if that's the guy, that his resume, 100%. And all the people that voted for him before say the same thing to me. So it's not my imagination, it's not my short-term or narrow view because it's my community. I'm talking about other communities, made decisions to make the count higher on killing our native bats. Without even having, to this day, I asked how much male bats we have, how much female bats we have. To this day, nobody knows. But it's okay for so much to die a day. Let's change this around. Let's say this thing was killing cats. Yeah? You know how much people love cats around here? Let's say it was allowed to kill 1,500 a day. Well, what happened at the Humane Society? They lynched that person and got rid of him. But nobody knew she was killing cats. But that's what I'm saying. We pick and choose what we're going to sacrifice when it comes to land, water, and our natural resources. And I am here today not willing to make any more sacrifices. His accolades, all of that he accomplished, I take nothing away from this gentleman. But going forward, we need something new, more creative. Not saying that he's not smart. He's a smart man. But like I said, when we had the first hearing with him and was questioned about the windmills, he said the people of Kahuku should be proud. changed that later on. He apologized because they should be proud because they're taking away the carbon footprint. But I asked him again, what was the scientific fact? What was the study around human beings and windmills? I don't know if anybody in this body know. He doesn't know neither. And you know why? Because there was never a study done. Because windmills was never supposed to be put in residential areas. They know that now, and the guys who are doing now for renewable energy, they're all checking and taking a look on how we go about renewable energy in Hawaii. It's already there. Not all of them is working because, again, we have a blocker, that's Hawaiian Electric, stopping these things from going forward. But I don't know if any of you guys ever went out there, which I did, not only with the land chair and Senator Rivera. I sat there when I seen huge bulldozers knocking down fruit trees and all kind of agricultural plants to build these windmills. So if we conserve to our Aina and we want our Aina to grow, ask them, ask the guys who are building them, and ask the people that do windmills, what is it going to do to the earth? What's going to do? 30 years from now, when this thing comes down, you cannot plant nothing around it. For years. That's the part I'm trying to say to him. This is not the guy that I hear about from all my different senators. He really did at one time, don't get me wrong, love what he did, love volunteering, love the Aina. But making decisions saying that not everybody going to agree with him, and then he got to make the hard decisions. Hard decisions is not taking away agriculture, which everyone over here always talk about how much we need agriculture. Please, you guys go down to Kahuku, talk to the people. Go over there and look at this ugly thing. Look at the zip lines they want to propose. There's a lot of stuff that is happening out there, taking away very little land that they have for agriculture out there. So I'm just saying, I talked to him, I even tried talking to him on the side. The guy I read about, the guy here, everyone talking about, that's the guy that everybody said 6 years ago, phenomenal champion. But I think, all the research I did and the families that I talked to about the environment, that's not the decision that we should going forward now. We need somebody that's, really conservative and really thinking about how important the land and our ocean is. Because it's vital to us, guys. Ever Beach, we don't have limo like we used to. Uncle Henry we tried at the neighborhood board to make a no-pig zone. He died trying to revive something that was unrevivable because he had no support. You think the Illinois would have been behind him 10,000%. Not on the side of the developer, trying to make more houses, more roads and more runoff. I don't want no runoff in my community. And I'm fighting against that, and has nothing to do with him personally. I have nothing against the gentleman. But the decisions that he made for these communities is vital. It's not reversible. You cannot. The water cap that we had broken over there out in Haubush, it's not repairable. It's done. So when Uncle Henry then was trying to revise statewide, neighbor island-wide education about this, they had no support. So that's the reason why he's in litigation right now. And that's the reason why I was very saddened when I tried to talk to him about it, knowing that we're not going to have the compassion guy that came with the 15 guys out there talking to people about the environment. So I just, I advise my colleagues to understand this is nothing personal. It's something that I observed in the short time I'm here and all the research that I did, that this is not the same guy that is on paper, the same guy on his resume. So I asked my colleagues to join me in not advising Chris Ewing for the position. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion? Senator Riviere?
Thank you, Mr. President. In opposition?
Please proceed.
Thank you. Before I begin my remarks, I should acknowledge that I have had interactions with the Board of Land and Natural Resources through my capacity with Keep the North Shore Country. We've been involved in some of these windmill and bat cases. My opposition to Mr. Yuen basically falls on his, shall I say, his notorious habit of disregarding staff submittals. In the case that I've been involved with the Keep the North Shore Country and Napuamakani's wind farm, there was a contested case hearing that lasted over a year, and evidence was presented, debated, briefed, oral arguments were heard, and the hearing officer, a neutral party, recommended that the plan to protect the endangered opeapea was inadequate. And she was a neutral party, and she did her due diligence and made the recommendation. Mr. Yuen just outright discounted it. It didn't matter the year's worth of research that she had poured through and presented. He just felt that it was more important to have the wind energy. And you know, this is my observation of what he did. And I hear other stories, whether it's a staff submittal for an amount of water to be diverted out of East Maui. And in the meeting, he says, well, it doesn't matter that the staff said 35 million gallons a day. We're going to just up it to 45 million. Other cases where we all remember a couple years ago, the fishermen for the longline boats that are stuck on the boats and they can't come onto the dock. Well, one of the unique aspects of that is that in order for them to sell the fish, all these fishermen who cannot come onto the dock have to have a local fisherman's license. So there was a hearing before the board, and Mr. Yuen aggressively challenged the people who were speaking against issuing these licenses for fishermen who cannot come into the state. And we saw that in the news a few years ago, how tragic it is that they can't get off the boats. So we see again and again, time and again, that there's this pushback. There's a Kahala Hilton, and they're using the beach. But they say, oh, it's not a beach now, it's covered in grass. No, but that is the beach that was covered with grass and now is being used for commercial private use. The common thread in all of this is that in every case where push comes to shove, versus when it's the community pushing back and saying, you know, we don't want this development, or we don't want water flooding into Ava Beach to destroy the limu, or the community says, we don't want these gigantic wind turbines towering over our schools and our houses with the shadow flicker and the noise and the vibrations. The people's concerns, I asked him this during the hearings, and he just really he basically dodged every question I asked about how do you weigh the public sentiment in the host community? How do you care about this? And in every case, it's just he's the smartest guy or something, and he doesn't care what the other recommendations are. He's made up his mind, he's going to push. And in every single time, it's for the developer, the builder, the whatever, and not for the community interest. And just I'll finish with this. When I asked him what his message would be to the people of Kahuku after 200 people were arrested, and these people are besides themselves. Believe me, I was involved I was out there seeing the deliveries and the pain and the grief and the agony that was those deliveries. And the people are still, to this day, suffering and dreading these monstrosities that are towering over their elementary school. I asked Mr. Yuen, what would you tell the people of Kahuku? And he said, well, I would hope they would find it in their heart to find a place of pride in these turbines. So that's the disconnect that I want you guys to think of as you cast your vote today. Thank you for allowing me to voice my opposition. Aloha.
Thank you. Do we have further discussion? Senator Ihara?
Mr. President, I rise in opposition to this nominee.
Please proceed.
If the motion was to vote down a nominee, I would go reservations. But we don't have reservations for no, so I'm a clear no. And I'm clear no because I can accept that as one of our 25 citizens in this chamber, I could be wrong. But I'm trusting my civic sensibilities and I'm going to make the best judgment I can. Like I said, I'm using my political tool, my vote, for a civic purpose. And so what is a civic purpose? I am looking for land board members, just like Hawaiian Homelands members. These are two boards that have legal fiduciary responsibilities. They are trustees. And trustees for the state and to protect and steward our natural resources, the uses of our state resources. And our state, public lands and beaches, water, they're public resources. You don't own those things. And this nominee did start out as a steward. We've been in battles together, and he's been one of my heroes. That's how it goes. There weren't many of them around back when he was there. So he would stand out. But it's not like a court where you try to be fair. The judge has to be fair. The judge is a trustee for the state. It's not, this is not, we're going to balance something. So as a trustee and a steward of resources, he started out that way. And I believe, in my judgment, is that what I call power creep. When you're in power for a while, it kind of, you get used to it. You want to do good, so you be efficient. And you move fast as you can, and you try to bring everyone along, but if you can't, you can't. And I think we forget, especially like here, to me, every time we make a decision, we need to look at in people's eyes. Like I say, the way we relate to the people is we kneel, because we're the ones with power. And power is the one that's responsible for this space, the safe space, all the quality. We're responsible. And after a while, and I'm talking about myself as well, because there is, intellectual humility kind of drains away a little bit because of the job we have to do. And so we kind of forget that that civic spaces are sacred spaces. They're not, we treat them as political spaces because political decisions, as I said, there's two things. One is a political leader decides what's good and then how we get there. So we have two powers that are self-justifying. And so I know it's hard. It's hard to move out of the family, personal values, reciprocity. And those reciprocities do not belong in a civic space. We're not to favor others or demean others in the civic space. They're all equal. And we need to treat it like that. And we're noticing, systemic racism, we're noticing that, but we also need to notice that how we treat dissidents, how we treat people with different views. I've done it. I've inadvertently diminished them. I've actually thought that they were lesser than me. How dare I? And I did. I have. And we all have. And this nominee is so well and good that he's effective. And he's not the only one that utilitarian values sometimes trump human relationships. I do appreciate the nominee. Actually, all the nominees I spoke to, they were honest. I'm shifting, I tell people, advocates lie. Because advocates will purposely omit data points that will undercut their position. And sometimes they exaggerate some data points to advance their position untruthfully. So I had a truthful conversation with him, and I really, really do honor him for that, because he did that not knowing how I'd vote. That means a lot to me. And it's just my one vote. So I don't know, like the other nominee, I don't know how the majority will be. I know, and so all I can do is vote based on what I can do. I have found the nominee the last couple of years have, I want to backtrack. To the credit of the nominee, I think, are on the same page. And I'll tell you a couple of things that we are on the same page. And so I could vote for him. But what's my civic purpose? I have found that on the minutes, one of the issues of the minutes, the nominee and I had a disagreement, in fact, even the chair. And I had to explain that once you're a move-on, you step up and you make a motion. Until you step down, everything you say counts. You can make mistakes, but the vote sticks on what you say. He had said, to his credit, next time you'll sit down and say whatever gallonage or whatever numbers that were incorrect, but it was said during the motion as a move-on. If he was on the floor debating and gave wrong information, that's okay, because we are voting on the move-on motion. And he, as a move-on, misstated it, but that's what they voted on. And no minutes can correct what happened in the room. And I'm a little bit forceful on this, not because they're bad people, because I think they're well-meaning. Well-meaning. I mean, I'm proud of them, because they're not, the private marketplace is not open at DLNR. It used to be. I was involved in politics for 30, 40 years. And DLNR, the land board leases, that's a marketplace. That's how you help. You know, in Hawaii, we do have to, we've got good people in government, but when you have to raise money for your campaign, you know, you want to stay on the line, and you try to stay on the right side of it, but some people cross it, inadvertently probably. There were times during the Babatata time it was done purposely, and they thought they could get away with it. And that's when I rolled out a 60-foot scroll of all of the millions of dollars of campaign funds that were blatantly given for quid pro quo purposes. Anyway, this doesn't happen. So, I mean, I think it's ironic that we have probably what I consider the cleanest, non-transactional executive branch we've had in a long time. So it's ironic that we find what would be considered, maybe some people will call it corruption. I don't consider it. It's political corruption. It's political, what it is political expediency. There's political goals. And what it is we're doing it so the minutes, he did it the way he did it because that was the most efficient way to do it. But when you did it, he wasn't looking into people's eyes. It was can I say it? Something a letter, blank, to them. He didn't mean it, but that's what happened. That's how people feel. So he is, I think, now open to hear people's truths. You know, a lot of times, I don't want to hear it. You know, I'm sorry, I don't want to hear it. But the second thing is on the being a steward. And I found the Carla Hilton example. Let's see, how would I say it? Both on whether it's a violation as well as, well, the lease amounts. You know, we're public, how valuable is the use of public resources? And I think the default should be it's valuable. It's as valuable as, I mean, it's priceless. And so we start with we have value, and then we try to utilize it with the private sector, and that's good. But the default should be on our side, on the state side, because we have a fiduciary responsibility. Maybe I'll just close by saying that if the nominee is confirmed, which we'll see, I just don't know, I hope that whatever he's learned in this advice and consent process will be used. And he did say, and I do want to, interesting, I'm kind of lifting up the person I'm going to vote down on. But he did say in one of our conversation, actually he wrote it, he says now, I guess it's if he's confirmed, I will always ask myself before I vote on anything, what is the civic purpose? Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Senator Favela?
Senate President, if we're going to vote, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Further discussion? If not, again, an aye vote will be for advice and consent to the nomination. A no vote is a vote to reject the nomination. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Senator Baker?
Aye.
Senator Chang?
No.
Senator Dela Cruz?
Kanalua.
Senator English? Senator Favela? Senator Gabbard? Senator Ihara?
No.
Senator Inoue? Senator Kahele? Senator Kanuha? Senator Keith Agaran? Senator Keohua Kalole? Senator Kidani? Senator Kim? Senator Misalucha?
Aye.
Senator Moriwaki? Senator Nishihara? Senator Rhodes?
No.
Senator Riviere? Senator Ruderman?
Yes.
Senator Shimabukuro? Senator Taniguchi? Senator Thielen? Senator Wakai? Senator Dela Cruz?
Kanalua.
Mr. President.
Aye.
16 ayes, 9 noes.
Thank you. Christopher Yuen has been confirmed to the Board of Land and Natural Resources. Madam Clerk.
On the bottom of page 20, adoption of resolution, House Concurrent Resolution number 26 for adoption.
I guess before recognizing Senator Kahele, this would be an appropriate time to say, Senator Misalucha, welcome to the Senate. We've not even gotten to the bills yet. Senator Kahele.
Mahalo, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of House Concurrent Resolution number 26.
Senator Favela.
Second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any objections? If not, the motion is carried. Said resolution has been adopted.
On page 21, adoption of resolution, House Concurrent Resolution number 147 for adoption.
If there are no objections from the members, the measure is deferred indefinitely. Madam Clerk.
Beginning on page 21, final reading.
If there are no objections from the members, we will be taking final reading on consent.
Members, we'll be taking these measures page by page, but on page 21, there are 4 measures. We'll be taking the first 3 measures first. So final reading on Senate Bill 2060, House Draft 2 relating to coastal zone management, Senate Bill 2130, House Draft 1 relating to the State Fire Code, and Senate Bill 2139, House Draft 1, relating to vacancies.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
Mr. President,
Senator Kim?
on Senate Bill 2139, on the relating to vacancies, please register my no vote. That is the retroactive measure of this, and I'm not able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other no votes?
For me, sir, for me, on the same bill.
So let me start for the television. So no vote for Senator Ruderman. No votes for Senator Kanuha, Favela, Moriwaki, Riviere, Taniguchi, Gabbard. We did get Kim, Kahele, Keohokalole, English, Kidani, Dela Cruz, Keith Agaran, Shimabukuro, and Wakai.
You want to do reservations?
I don't think there are any
there's
reservations.
Okay, 9 ayes, 16.
There are a lot of noes.
9 ayes, 16 noes.
So Senate Bill 2139 fails. The other two bills on the page are unanimously adopted and pass final reading.
At the bottom of page 21, final reading of Senate Bill 2185, House Draft 1, relating to violation of privacy.
We did that already, I thought, Madam Clerk. No? Oh, I'm sorry, you're correct. If there are no objections from the members, action on this measure is to defer indefinitely.
On page 22, final reading of Senate Bill 2193, House Draft 2, relating to employment discrimination.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2193, HD2, passes final reading.
Final reading of Senate Bill 2262, House Draft 2, relating to the Hawaii Teacher Standards Board.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2262, HD2, passes final reading.
Final reading of Senate Bill 2275, House Draft 2, relating to notarial acts.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2275, HD2, passes final reading.
Final reading of Senate Bill 2384, House Draft 2, relating to motor vehicles.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2384, HD2, passes final reading.
Final reading of Senate Bill 2386, House Draft 2, relating to waste management.
Is there any discussion? Senator Favela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to rise in strong support of Senate Bill 2386, SD2, HD2, and I just wanted to insert comments into the journal.
So ordered. Further discussion, Senator Kahele.
Mahalo, Mr. President. I rise in strong support of the measure.
Please proceed.
Colleagues, Article 11, Section 9 of the Hawaii State Constitution is dedicated to the environmental rights of Hawaii's people and states each person has the right to a clean and healthful environment as defined by laws relating to environmental quality, including control of pollution and conservation protection and enhancement of natural resources. The measure before this body today, Senate Bill 2386, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 2, would prohibit a waste or disposal facility in the conservation district, as well as require a half-mile buffer zone for any future facility, and this is a bold step to advance environmental justice in Hawaii's rural communities. Now, what is environmental justice? Environmental justice is a movement inspired by the 1960s civil rights movement when communities across the continent, primarily made up of low-income, minority populations, began to fight the disproportionate placement of toxic land uses in their communities. One of the first communities to lead the effort was Warren County, North Carolina. In 1982, the state of North Carolina proposed to create a highly toxic polychlorinated biphenyl, otherwise known as PCB, landfill in the predominantly African American community of Warren County. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, noted that PCBs have been demonstrated to cause a variety of adverse health effects. The community of Warren County fought the siting, with hundreds of people arrested during protests. The Warren County situation resulted in numerous studies showing that commercial hazardous waste landfills were predominantly placed in African American communities across the country. And for far too long, the Waianae Coast has carried the heavy burden of Oahu's industrial energy, military ordnance, and municipal and construction landfill waste. For decades, this community has sounded the alarm as to the numerous and concerning health impacts that remain concentrated in the adjacent communities to these landfills. Moreover, there are numerous health vulnerabilities in these communities that warrant concern, including high comorbidity and respiratory diseases, including asthma. These baseline health insecurities are further exacerbated by the current COVID-19 crisis. The communities bearing the burden of the island's waste are predominantly Native Hawaiian, and many of these families also struggle economically. This pattern of marginalizing indigenous, minority, low-income communities is a strong example of environmental racism, and it can no longer be ignored, and it can no longer go without redress. Every community in Hawaii has the right to a healthful, healthy environment, and no community should bear the disproportionate risks and consequences of environmental pollution. Toxic coal ash, asbestos, contaminated petroleum soil, and thousands of tons of construction and demolition waste have no place within 750 feet of any Hawaii residential neighborhood. The existing construction and demolition facility in Nanakuli will not be affected by this bill, and in fact, as stated in its final EIS dated January 2020, that it has 7 to 12 years before reaching capacity. In the meanwhile, the city and county of Honolulu has the capacity and must develop a long-term plan for responsible waste management on the island of Oahu. Further, if we are truly committed to island sustainability, we should encourage and prioritize projects that reuse materials to the maximum extent possible. This has the potential to increase the life of the existing C&D facility without having to expand the facility into pristine, untouched, undeveloped land or local communities. Today's architectural and building professionals have the talent and technology to do extraordinary work in the area of sustainability. By working together with the construction industry, the business community, and nonprofits, state and county governments are fully poised to support maximizing reduction, recycling, and reuse best practices with the goal of diverting as much C&D waste away from our landfills as an essential aspect of design and construction activity. Colleagues, we have been moving towards environmental justice in Hawaii for decades. Those that came before us, in 1974, the year I was born, passed the Hawaii Environmental Policy Act, otherwise known as HEPA, finding that the quality of humanity's environment is critical to humanity's well-being, that humanity's activities have broad and profound effects upon the interrelations of all components of the environment. This remains just as true today as it was 46 years ago, and we are well past due to better realize this vision. In Hawaii, our state motto is Ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono, which means the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. Let us never forget, it is our kuleana to conserve and protect our limited island's natural resources, and that we have an affirmative duty to promote a healthy and sustainable Hawaii for everyone, regardless of race, ancestry, or socioeconomic class. Mahalo, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further discussion? Senator Kim, did you have something? Okay, further discussion. If not, do we have unanimous consent? No vote for Senator Kim. Any reservations?
24 ayes, 1 no.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2386 HD2 passes final reading.
Final reading of Senate Bill 2421, House Draft 1, relating to condominium associations.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2421 HD1 passes final reading.
We're on page 23. I'm sorry for confusion earlier. We are going to go back to page by page on these bills. So on page 23, we have final reading of Senate Bill 2486, House Draft 1, relating to education data. Senate Bill 2523, House Draft 2, relating to public safety. Senate Bill 2612, House Draft 1, relating to sports officials. Senate Bill 2638, House Draft 3, relating to domestic violence. Senate Bill 2820, House Draft 2, relating to renewable energy. And Senate Bill 2844, House Draft 2, making appropriations for claims against the state, its officers, or its employees.
Do we have any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes for all bills on this page.
Thank you. All bills on that page have passed final reading.
Page 24, final reading of Senate Bill 2866, House Draft 2, relating to the Hawaii Employer Union Health Benefits Trust Fund Employee Beneficiary Monthly Contributions. Senate Bill 2871, House Draft 3, relating to professional and vocational licensing trust funds. Senate Bill 2993, House Draft 2, relating to commercial driver's licenses. And Senate Bill 3103, House Draft 2, relating to a school facilities agency.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes on all bills on this page.
Thank you. All bills on said page pass final reading.
On page 25, final reading of Senate Bill 3119, House Draft 2, relating to statutory revision, amending or repealing various provisions of the Hawaii Revised Statutes or the Session Laws of Hawaii for the purposes of correcting errors and references, clarifying language, or deleting obsolete or unnecessary provisions. Third reading and final reading of Senate Bill 3158, House Draft 1, relating to motor vehicles. Senate Bill 2920, House Draft 1, relating to conformity to the Internal Revenue Code. And Senate Bill 2629, House Draft 1, relating to the environment.
Is there any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
25 ayes for all bills on this page.
Thank you. All bills on said page pass final reading.
On page 26, miscellaneous business, usual and customary resolutions, Senate resolutions 199 to 201 for adoption.
Senator Kahele.
I move for the adoption of Senate resolutions number 199 to 201.
Senator Favela.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any objections? If not, the motion is carried. Said resolutions have been adopted.
We have no further business, Mr. President.
Are there any announcements today, Senator Thielen?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in a point of personal privilege.
Please proceed.
So my fellow senators, it's going to be the last time I can say this in a regular session. I wasn't going to stand up and say anything, but I know how much you all love when I get up to talk, and I didn't want to deny you of that privilege. But I know I'm the final thing standing in between you and lunch, so I will try to keep this short. I just wanted to say a thank you, and I want to begin with the Senate staff, the SMA, Sergeant-at-Arms, LRB, Communications Office, and most of all, the Senate Clerk's Office. I want to thank all of you for the tremendous work that you do day in and day out. You are such a professional and committed staff, and it's been a real pleasure to serve with all of you. I have relied so much on your assistance and your help, and you've just been phenomenal. I've never had a better staff in any office that I've worked in, and you're wonderful, and the Senate is very, very lucky to have you. So thank you all. I also want to thank the staff in my office. I've been really fortunate over the years to have a number of wonderful young people that we've brought in as interns, session staff, and it's been a real treat to work with them and to help share with them the great training that's available here and help them get used to the legislative process and to understand it so that they're not scared of it and that they will participate in it, you know, as they get older and as adults. But most deeply of all, I want to thank Jennifer Barra of my staff. She has been just instrumental. She's been with me for the last 7 of the 8 years that I've served here and is just phenomenal and has done just a wonderful job in everything, and it's just been a real joy to watch her grow and her ability in managing the other staff and in helping them. So it's been, you know, my time here would not have been the same without her. And then I want to thank you, my fellow senators. I think it's safe to say that we've had a tempestuous relationship, in part because I ran for office because I was really angry at this body about some of the legislation that it passed. And I entered into this body more as an advocate than as a senator. I took a little bit of umbrage at the senator from Liliha, I'm sorry, his comments about advocates earlier. I don't think that that's actually accurate. I think there's a lot of great things about advocacy. But, you know, I came from a family with 3 brothers. I'm Irish, a strong feminist that grew up in the 70s, so I tend to be a little bit scrappy, and I know that it's been a rocky road a lot of times in working with many of you, and I want to thank you for your patience. I've always been a little bit of a square peg in a round hole here. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to leave, is I want to go back out to do some other work. I don't know what that is going to be yet, but hopefully I'll be able to work with you again in the future in another capacity. But I did want you to know that even while we tend to have disagreements, I spend a lot of time talking to other people outside this body so that they understand the value of the legislature, because I understand it a lot better now that I've been here for 8 years. A lot of times people will come in and they'll talk about, you know, it's so political, the decision's so political, and they're using it as a dirty word. But this branch is intended to be a check and balance. It was created because the founders of the country were worried that the executive would evolve into a king, and they didn't want a king making decisions. And so they came up with the idea of the representative democracy, where you would have bodies that were elected representatives geographically distributed around the community, and they would have to make decisions based upon a majority. And so the ideal is that check and balance on the executive is going to be bringing in, you know, wider opinions from across the state, from closer to the people, and that's going to have a requirement that there be a majority, that the majority of the people would be supportive of it. And I think it's important that when folks come on in here and complain about political, is that in the ideal world, that's exactly what we're supposed to be. That's exactly the function of the legislative branch. And I appreciate all that I've learned from you folks going through this past 8 years about that. I guess me being me, though, and always being a little bit scrappy, I can't walk away without just saying one other thing is, as we all know, we don't live in an ideal world. And one of the senators earlier talked about this thing called a power creep. We're in the middle of an epic time across our nation and our state. And I think over the next 2 years, it's going to be really difficult. And it's going to be important that this body remember the importance of the legislative branch in the ideal term. And a lot of times what we end up deciding here, it requires on self-enforcement. And that means that we have to take the time to be empathetic with people. We have to take the time to listen to the complaints, and even when we don't agree with them and then we decide to do something different, to take the time to explain why. We can't convince everybody, but right now in our country, the distrust of government is so phenomenally high that it's important for us to be able to get through this pandemic and this economic crisis is to help bring back that trust in government. And that's going to mean that what you do, because I won't be here with you next year or beyond, that you take the time to make sure that you can help bring back that trust. And I was really heartened, Senate President, by the comments that there is a commitment in the Senate to try and open up testimony and participation through remote access next year, because I think as an island state, that's especially important. It's difficult even for people in my district or, you know, the farther reaches of Oahu to get here sometimes, but for the neighbor island folks, it's well nigh impossible. And I think that openness and transparency, while sometimes it may make the immediate decision more difficult, is just so important to gaining that increased trust in government. So I will continue to try to help educate folks on the outside about the importance of the political branch of government. And thank you again for your time and your patience. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Before asking if there are other announcements, the Speaker and I, the majority leaders, and our heads of the communication office have been in discussion this week to make sure that we adjourn in an appropriate fashion. Whoever finished first was going to come over in a small group to extend their best to the other chamber. We looked at people in the gallery, and of course with the tradition of singing Hawai'i Aloha, but as we read how community spread has occurred with larger groups and some of the singing and everything else, we couldn't find a way to get everybody in. I unfortunately was confident that the Senate would be hosting the House because they would be adjourning before this passionate body would have concluded our business. So I'd like to invite the Speaker, Majority Leader, I see the Vice Speaker, and I would like to yield the rostrum to either the Speaker or the Majority Leader who wanted to extend their best wishes. As they walk up, I can only tell you during this extraordinary times, the Speaker and I have been involved in numerous meetings, and we still want to assure the people of Hawaii that we continue to work together, and our ability to work together to get through COVID-19 and all of its terrible effects it's been having on our community, our nation, and our world, that we are together. Speaker?
On behalf of the House, I want to just thank the Senate for all of your work this year. I think that we did a lot, and it was a very challenging time for all of us, but I think it's made us all stronger. It's made the legislature stronger, and as I informed the House today in closing remarks, that if we put our minds to it, we can do anything. So we look forward to working with you. I'm sure after Sunny Dai will be around for the next few months, and also for looking forward to working with you next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker, Majority Leader, and Vice Speaker. Do we have any further announcements? If not, this is the part where it says we'll take the short recess to inform the House we've adjourned. We have been informed that they have adjourned, so I would like to simply make a closing statement as well. A year ago, at Sine Die, I stood before you and said that it was the most difficult session I had ever confronted, and The challenges were incredible, and I'm not going to jinx next year by saying this was the most difficult and have them prove me wrong again. But what is incredibly important to me, and certainly what was hurtful, is the accusation that some of our actions, especially in the area of advise and consent, were politically motivated. It is no great secret that the Senate is comprised of varying blocks of votes that come together to try to work to govern. But when I stand up here in front of you and count the votes and look for the ayes and the noes, the reservations, there is no semblance of sense relative to the blocks of votes in the Senate as to how you cast your votes on advise and consent. But you each bring your individual passion to the task. You take advise and consent incredibly seriously, and understand that once we give that final approval, that they will be entrusted with an incredible responsibility. And so I thought last year's was tough. This year's was as tough. You know, I liked Laura's thing about, you know, I'm sure you all were anxious to hear me speak. But I try hard as the president to have a relationship with every one of the members so that I can understand what's important to you, where you come from, what you're trying to do. And last year at the end of session, I found that not a relationship, but a friendship that I have with Senator Nishihara was incredibly strained. And it was incredibly painful to be in that place because of advise and consent. But because we also strongly believe in trying to do the best job we can, that is where all of that comes from. And luckily, it is a strong friendship that has been healed and restored. And I am so grateful to have that back. But I'm grateful that each one of you bring your passion onto this floor, vote your conscience, and then walk out of the chamber to see where we can agree and collaborate to continue to move Hawaii forward, because that's why we're all here. And it is tough to say no to some of the nominees, because each nominee has taken a great risk by putting their name forward, putting their name in the public domain, and all with the intention of serving and doing what is best for Hawaii, its people, and its land. With COVID-19, we faced challenges that we've never faced before. I followed more members on social media, especially when I was in the 14-day quarantine, than I ever had before I even started watching Facebook Live programs done by our members. Senator Kaiho Kaloli, one of my favorite, I even got invited to be on his show one night. And so it is hurtful when I read in social media that we're in recess, so why are you even getting paid and these people are doing nothing? I saw nothing but incredible work that each and every one of you were doing in your communities. Group Zoom meetings to be in touch with your constituents, food drives, assisting constituents with the backlog at the unemployment insurance. And when we bring the gavel down today, that doesn't mean that our work is finished. Each and every one of you are going to go back into those communities and continue to do the work that you have been doing. Unfortunately, each and every one of us are going to continue to help our constituents to get through the unemployment insurance process, because we still have too many of our constituents who have not gotten paid. food drives, and I am incredibly worried about what is going to happen after July 31st, when the $600 a week unemployment insurance plus-up goes away. Now, Chair Dela Cruz, Chair Luke put together a great package. You know, we were able to commit $100 a week till December 30th. $500 a month or half of your rent, whatever is less, to assist those who are going to be challenged in paying those rents, helping retraining for unemployment. It has been incredible hard work, and I have already seen the agenda posted for the COVID-19 committee, who intends to get back to work immediately next week, continuing to do the work. So I just want to let you know how much I admire the dedication and commitment from each member of this Senate. I want to really thank our staff. We have had several positive tests here, but through good practices and making sure that we did have the face masks, that we were washing hands, that we were practicing social distance, none of them led to spread beyond the one individual. But our employees continued to come to work to perform the essential services that are so important for us to get our job done so that we can serve the people of Hawaii. I'd like to thank the National Guard, who has assisted us and worked with our Sergeant-at-Arms staff here and the House Sergeant-at-Arms to continue to try to make the Capitol a safe place for essential workers to report to and do their work and get the job done. To both Senators Thielen and Ruderman, you have made the job incredibly interesting. You are the definition of what a challenging environment at the workplace is, where no statement goes unchecked, but it makes each and every one of us better, because you know you cannot perform at anything less than your best, because everybody else comes here with their best efforts. And so I look forward to seeing all of you. We will be back. We project in September to confirm judges. So while this is our last regular session, we will have another opportunity or two to be back together. So stay safe. Take care of yourselves. All of my best to you and your families, and certainly to the late Senator Harimoto and his family. You know, our thoughts are still with you, but as in birth and new life, we welcome Senator Misalucha to our chambers to continue to do the work of the late Senator Harimoto's district. So, with that, Senator Kahele, we are ready to adjourn sine die.
I move that the Senate of the 30th Legislature, regular session of 2020, adjourn sine die ahuiho kako.
Senator Favela.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. If there are no objections from the members, the Senate of the 30th Legislature, regular session of 2020, adjourn sine die.